All right, welcome back to another episode of the New Strength Way podcast. I'm here with longtime friend and awesome all-around dude, Nik Adamson. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thanks for having me, mate.
So the reason why I wanted to get you on is that obviously being in the fitness space, there's a lot of what it comes down to is nutrition. You're a dietitian and also have been in PT yourself, have a lot of real-world experience around like doing marathons and ridiculously long endurance stuff. So you're not only doing the stuff as a work side of things, you're practically in the field yourself of pursuing to get better and keep pushing yourself and seeing what you can do with your body. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to get you on. And then two, it's always just a good time hanging out, mate. So if you want to start off and tell listeners a little bit about yourself, what got you into training and your journey through there, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, right. I am an accredited practicing dietitian and a PT as well, as you said. How I got into it's a pretty interesting story. When I was a pretty small kid, I was about 4, I had a fairly complex childhood cancer. I don't remember anything about it, but I was fairly fortunate to get through it from all accounts. But when I got old enough, the doctors sort of told me that the best way to stay healthy and keep everything under control was to eat well and be active. The journey began. Sort of after school, I decided, being a personal trainer seemed like a good idea. Everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
Pretty easy qualification to get. So interested in being active, so I was, and got the qualification, worked in that for a few years, and then, as we all know, it's probably not the hour of training that's the most important part, it's maybe the other 23 when you're looking for results. It made me sort of have a look at what happens outside training, and that nutrition space was really where it was at to get your results, whether you wanted to lose weight, gain weight, increase fitness, nutrition was where it was at.
Yeah, cool. And so was that like something that you started to dial in towards as you'd had more experience with clients and was it that you could see that just the training itself wasn't having the impact, or what was it that really got you to go, oh, you know what, I'm going to go into the dietetics phase or like move into that as a career?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, as a fitness professional, we've got to work within our scope of practice. And, you have your client for an hour, for example, but our scope of practice with nutrition ends at the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating. We can just sort of recommend the general recommendations. Well, we should recommend the general recommendations. And that's about it. And, really when you're looking for higher end performance and some more specific results, dialing in nutrition is, the important thing. The general recommendations will only get you so far.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. Awesome. So let's talk about we spoke a little bit before the show, and there's a lot of misunderstanding on what person or what title has different things, or what do they do. We've got there's now nutrition coaches, you've got nutritionists, you've got dietitians. What's the sort of general world in what does a dietitian do versus each of those other ones there?
Right, so they're all nutrition qualifications, so you're all somewhat qualified to speak on nutrition, but in my case, being an accredited practicing dietitian means that you first need to do your 4 years of study at university, so do your dietetics degree, and then being accredited by the Dietitians Association of Australia, basically putting in a continued education to make sure that you're working to the standards. Being an accredited practicing dietitian means we can only recommend evidence-based interventions, where nutritionists, nutrition coaches, that sort of thing, I'm sure they've got varying time domains in terms of education, but there's no steadfast guidelines they need to act within.
Yeah. And there's a difference in terms of what you guys are allowed to do in terms of dietitians. Every time we get a lot of people oh, can you give me a meal plan? I'm no, we don't touch that. You guys are allowed to prescribe a meal plan for people, right?
Yeah, that's right. So as a dietitian, you can pretty much talk on all things food, anything through from suggesting meal ideas right through to say the clinical application of somebody coming in with high blood pressure and needing advice on that. Where moving down the scale, as you mentioned, nutrition coaches, nutritionists, can't go to that clinical level. It's more around just general healthy eating advice.
Yeah, cool, awesome. And let's start moving into a little bit of the stuff of like, we spoke a little bit before, is like adherence is probably the biggest thing when it comes to nutrition training, consistently showing up and consistently doing the things that you need to do. What are some of the things that you've found in that sort of way that actually help people get over the line adherence wise? Because we all know the person who can just go, okay, I'm just going to eat this, this, and this forever, and for the next 3 years, and they get in really great shape, and then sometimes those people then become trainers because they got in great shape, and then they wonder why their clients will not do the same thing that they were doing, that they don't have the same, and it's a lot of the time the struggle that they get is they're just not as committed as I was, versus obviously those people have a very different world, and that those things interplay into it. What are some things that you've found that help people stick to the process a little bit better?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think consistency is the key to results. That's it for sure. There's no real magic bullet. It is more around consistency. But I think the biggest thing is mindset, and starting to work towards the mindset of, say, practicing progress, not perfection. That all or nothing mentality, I think, is the biggest thing in our world that holds us back from results. We're either all in or we're all out. And all too often people sort of are all in, and then when it goes wrong, say I can't get what's available on my meal plan, then it becomes a free-for-all, and you've sort of moved away from that consistency, and that's where the wheels start to fall off. So I think making changes around moving towards progress, not perfection. So, it might be something as simple as, if breakfast is the struggle, if I'm doing it twice a week 1 week, if we can add in a third breakfast the next week, that's progress. That's all we need to strive for. And just those little sustainable changes, that's going to bring those longer term results.
For sure. And that's one of the things that I think shows up in the people who are really, really successful, and particularly if they're not in that the robot style where they can just eat the same exact foods every day. I think a lot of those guys are really, really way more engaged with just going, okay, how can I just get a little bit better? Rather than like, how do I eat like a bodybuilder, physique athlete, bikini model or anything like that? It's just like, okay, I'm right here, right now, how do I take a step forward?
That's right, yeah.
So is there things that you try to do in the practice or with clients there to encourage them to shift from that all or nothing mentality over to something that's a more progress focused model?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is starting small. If you can show your client that they've had some little wins, that's the key to building that progress, and moving away from that all or nothing mentality, because there's nothing more motivating than success. So if you can show somebody that, say for example, going back to that breakfast situation we used before, somebody is feeling more energized because they're starting to add more meal structure through their day, and going from 2 breakfasts a week to 3 breakfasts a week, you are feeling more energized the next week. That's a little win. It's just those tiny little changes that if you can show are improving their life, it's an easy sell.
Yeah, for sure. And that goes hand in hand with training in the way that we approach it too. It's like, sometimes, yeah, you can get somebody walk in and just smash it, and like one little correction makes them PR their deadlift by 20 kilos, but most of the time it's like, oh, this feels better. I don't feel my lower back like doing as much of the work, or I feel like it's smoother. It's like, that's the win today. Like, that's the one that when if you follow this for the next 3 months, 6 months, you're going to add 20, 40, 50 kilos onto the bar with that there. And it's the same thing. It's just like, okay, if we can identify progress and we can acknowledge that, then I think it does a hell of a lot to taking people to engaging in it rather than just looking at the end result.
Yeah, well and truly. You've shown them that small piece of success, and that just drives motivation.
Yeah, for sure, man. We talk about, I've got a little like jingle to it that I've been working on. It's like, action creates momentum drives progress drives success. Yeah. I need to refine the actual word so it sounds a little bit better than that, but I'm working on it. By the time this podcast comes out, I'll have it dialed. But cool, man. what are some myths that we find in the nutrition space? We said that the all or nothing is a big thing that people have problems with. Is there anything else that you consistently see with clients, or that, whether it be in your clinic or in the PT side of stuff, that certain beliefs that they have around food that may or may not be essential to them getting the results they want?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing, far and away, is following the fad diet. And I suppose it's that, going back to that all or nothing approach, fad diets promise the world, quite often sound too good to be true. There's always a latest fad diet, and it doesn't really pan out to be sustainable enough to bring the results longer term. And you can dial that into whether it's keto, paleo, plant-based eating, intermittent fasting. They're all just I suppose the latest fads I can think of from the last couple of years off the top of my head. People following those, finding they're not sustainable, and then, as you sort of said, falling off the wagon and not achieving what they're looking for longer term.
Yeah, so what are some ways that we can encourage people to stick away from those, the fad diets? And I know the thing that really drives them is when we look at like your inverted U curve, and you've got maybe 10% of the population that certain diet is perfect for. And that 10% of the population crush it when they follow that, which makes the other 90% be like, maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need to cut all my carbs out because Nick did it and he looks amazing and he's got heaps of energy, and then I do it and I'm like, I'm tanking, man. My strength's down, my energy's down, I can't sleep properly or whatever that might be. But it's maybe that's just what you have to do to get in shape. Is sort of some of the trouble as well, is that we can confuse the ideas of what's just the suffering involved, because you're going to have to be hungry if you want to lose weight sometimes. You can't expect to just be full all the time. There is better diets and better ways of approaching it where you're going to be less hungry, but sometimes I think we embrace the suffering thinking that it's doing us good when it can kind of push us into a bad place instead.
Yeah, well and truly. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I like to use, probably for lack of a better phrase, the how's it going for you test. If you want to try one of these types of nutrition that we're sort of talking about as being fads, it may well work for you. But the best kind of diet or style of nutrition is the one that you can stick to longer term that brings you results. So if you want to try intermittent fasting, give it a try for a few days and ask yourself, how's it working? As you said, if you're feeling like you're tanking through the morning and you've got no energy, that's probably not for you. I think the biggest thing, if you really are interested or concerned about it, go and see an accredited practicing dietitian. We know the evidence behind all of these things and we can help you through them. We're not going to knock any of your ideas on the head in terms of trying these things. It's about supporting you through them safely. So it's about developing, I think, a diet or a style of eating that works well for you. And that might be trying a few different styles, but test them, try them, see how they work for you. And if they don't work, try something else. There will be a way that works well for you.
And I think there's that thing, as you said, you have to be willing to test it and try it. And I think part of it is nearly all of those things you'll feel great with to start off with as well. And I think that's the draw card for a lot of people is it's very, very popular right now with the amount of documentaries that go into it with the plant-based dieting. And I think the general premise that I get from it after seeing it so much is people probably need to eat more vegetables.
Yeah.
And when people convert over to doing that and eating more vegetables, more fiber versus cheeseburgers and pizza, they feel pretty good because they're getting all these nutrients their body hasn't got before, which means that they then have, because they feel great, there's a confirmation bias that comes along with that. And then the step is maybe that's 6 months down the road where you either start to slacken off because there's excitement and momentum in the starting point for a lot of things. So if we look at it and I'm talking from experience with Jess, my partner, that's how we met. You guys know each other. She went vegetarian for a period of about 7 months, and at the start it was really, really great for her. And then towards the end, about the 6 month mark, her energy levels really tanked. And whether that be that she wasn't putting in as much time into the preparation and getting all the nutrients right and that sort of stuff as she might have at the start, or whether it be that she'd just gotten to the point where the nutrients that she was getting out of the animal-based products that she was no longer getting anymore, like it kind of dropped to levels where it then become malnutrition. I'm not too sure, but there's definitely that thing of like, how well does it work for you over a longer term, not just the first 4 to 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of, talking about Game Changers documentary and the plant-based eating. Any style of nutrition, if it is founded in plant-based, so, as you said, eating more fruits, more vegetables, more whole grains, that's the foundation of any good eating plan. So yeah, you're going to get that confirmation bias that, I'm eating all these really nutritious foods. You are probably going to feel better. But then if you are excluding food groups, as you mentioned, unless you're doing it in a nutritious way that is sustainable longer term, it's probably not going to work for you. And your test or trial of these sort of styles of nutrition might last, as Jess did, 6 months or so. And that's how long it took to sort of find that, this isn't the best thing for me. It's not working for me as I need it to be. Time for a change. It just wasn't, I suppose, as you said, sustainable in the longer term. But again, well recognised that it wasn't sustainable and picked up on it.
Yeah, and part of that might be even just as simple as it's not sustainable right now, as another key point, because I think there's a definite thing of like it might be the right thing, right person, wrong time.
Yeah.
I know for me in competing in strongman, like intermittent fasting works really, really well for just me getting up and going to work and getting about my day, but not so good for training hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was something that I wanted to stick with because I felt really good. I didn't have to worry about preparing breakfast. Like it made my day easier when I was busy. But then training off the back end of fasted state just went really, really bad. And I remember the key defining moment was when I got like squashed under a squat that I'd never missed in like 5 years. And I was like, I didn't get this much weaker. Like, what's going on? I started eating breakfast again before I trained. 3 weeks later, I squatted 30 kilos more than that for a double, and it was quite comfortable. And I was like, I didn't get 30 kilos stronger in leg strength in 3 weeks. All that was missing was I was just really, really tanked from having low energy levels. Whether that be neural system shut down, I'm not too sure of the details of all that, but I felt great when I added breakfast back in for training purposes. And I think that's something that we probably need to identify better as practitioners in the fitness space or nutrition space. Is okay, where is this diet going to work well for you, and where maybe does that not work so well? I think that's something that dietitians probably do a lot better than we do in fitness. It's like, all right, just go and try it, we'll see what happens. Let's touch on your endurance world, because you're doing really, really incredible things in your longest run was 50 Ks in trails, which is like way too scary for me to ever think of doing. What was it that drew you to taking on that side of things?
Again, a couple of different things. I quite like a challenge. I firmly believe that as people, we're built for change. We shouldn't ever be stagnant. The human body is constantly changing, whether it's getting stronger, whether it's getting faster. We're built for change. We shouldn't be stagnant. And I think the running just came out of a lot of the clients I had at the time were training for a bit of running, and I sort of thought, run a mile in your shoes. There's nothing better, I find, than for not only building rapport with clients, but for knowing how to program is doing what they do. If you know it personally, you're going to do it a lot better for them, and that's what drew me to it. And then, it all sort of snowballed. I think I did maybe, 5 years ago, I got asked to go to Parkrun, just that 5K community run every Saturday, just to, try it out. And that was world ending. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, just running 5Ks, and then it snowballs from there. Let's do a 10K, let's do a 15K, let's do a half marathon, let's do a marathon, and it just grew.
I love it. And I love that the idea of seeking a challenge. Like, that's something that I think a lot of people get caught in the day-to-day of I should just turn up and train. I'm not going to train for something because I don't want the added pressure of that. But really, I think sometimes the training for something makes the actual training part easier. The knowing that you have to turn up to this marathon means that you're going to put in the work, because there's nothing worse than not going through that piece once you've said you're going to do it. And the hardest part in training, we've talked consistency, adherence seems to be this this theme that's running through so far and what we've spoken about today is a lot of the time it's not the actual training, it's the turning up day in, day out. And when you have that challenge that you're moving towards, I think that's a super powerful thing to engage you in that process. So that's super cool. That's something a theme that seems to be really, really consistent in your story as well.
Absolutely. I think having something on the calendar is the most important thing because it gives reason for training. Training for training's sake, I'm sure, is doable, but I think if there is a motivating factor, a driving force, you're going to put a lot more purpose behind your training. It doesn't matter what it is. I think it'll drive you a lot more than just training for training's sake.
For sure, man, for sure. So let's talk about the big run. So 50 Ks, is that down in the Blue Mountains or around there?
Central Coast.
Central Coast, right. What was it like in preparing for something that was that long?
It was daunting, to be honest. It was very daunting. I'd never gone that far. I'd done road marathons, 4 hours worth of stuff, but this one looked like being about 8 to 9 hours with lots and lots of elevation, so lots of sort of climbing up hills and down into gullies and all sorts.
And that's the bit that I think people forget about with trail running too, right? There's they think, a 40K marathon takes, what was Kipchoge did it in 2 hours, so it's like, a marathon's 2 hours, no, one, a normal person doesn't do it anywhere near that, but two, the running through trails and that sort of terrain is a very, very different world to running on a flat road, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's where we got back together again last year with the biggest thing was preparation and getting the mind right was one thing and knowing that you're going to be at it all day, but getting the body right in terms of making sure you're doing your strength work to make sure you had that right. You were doing your run training to make sure you had the engine right, and then you were working on your mind to make sure that you had your mind right. It was,
Yeah. How important was having, from what I've seen, you normally have another person or so that you're doing, you're training with at least, and a lot of the events too, having that supportive network around you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the biggest part. I think for all of my longer events, for any event really, I would much rather train with someone else because it just adds a whole nother level of accountability. If you're going to you want to run at 5 o'clock in the morning, if your alarm goes off and you don't feel like it and you're going on your own, you're probably going to roll over and go back to sleep. But if you're meeting a friend, a client, a training partner, you're not going to roll over and go back to sleep. You're going to be accountable and you're going to show up for that person.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's cool. Let's touch on this. Obviously, you sought us out about probably a bit over 6 months ago now to work on a little bit of the strength side of stuff alongside your running. What do you feel like implementing the strength side has done for your running in terms of it's kind of not frowned upon in the running community, I feel like, but it's a small subset of the community that are actually going, this stuff can help, and then everyone else is like, no, I just need to run more. Tell us about your experience of becoming a little bit more holistic in your approach to running as a sport or a challenge.
It's a hard sell. It's a hard sell to people. I think I was more across the benefits purely because I was more in the industry and I knew of the benefits of strength. When you know, but if you don't know what you don't know. So yeah, it is a hard sell. There's that old school mentality of, to get better at running, you just need to run, where, when you're looking at something like the event I was looking at doing, I knew there was going to be a lot of strength requirement to it. There was so much uphill, and building that power base and that strength base was going to be really, really important. So yeah, had no hesitation on doing that, but wanted to do it in a really smart and efficient way, and that's where I came to see you guys because, again, going back to not only the smart and efficient way, but being accountable to it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something super powerful, and it seems a common theme amongst so many of the coaches that we have come in for the podcast. All have at least had a coach at some point in their journey, and quite often it tends to come up to when they're taking on something bigger and new, it's the first thing they do. They don't wait until failure of, hey, I didn't perform as well on this race, maybe next race I should get a coach, or next time I try to take that on. it's like, all right, I'm going for this thing that I know is going to stretch me right to my edge. I need people behind me right now to make this happen. And I think that's a really, really common trend of people who are successful is they're really, really quick to bringing people into their team, bringing people into their network to support them along that journey. So that's super cool to see that you're very, very similar in that way too.
Yeah, well and truly. There's nothing more valuable than knowledge, I think. And, you can do anything in this world on your own, I suppose, but doing it the best way. I think surround yourself with people that are experts in their field and you're going to be a lot more successful.
For sure, man. That's super cool, and I think a really, really great way that you put it there. Let's start to wrap up because I want to be appreciative of your time today, mate. And you've given us a lot of quick little pieces of information in the nutrition space and also in the running space. Let's touch on maybe a few key things that if somebody was listening to this and wanting to make change with their nutrition, let's go to nutrition first and then secondary we'll touch running as well. But wanting to get started with that, what would be some key actionable points that you would give to those guys to get the most out of it or get them moving in some positive direction?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that message of consistency. Practice progress, not perfection. Make one small change into the direction that you want to go, and then once that's solidified, make another small change. Just those small little progressive changes, and you're going to achieve. You trust the process, make those small changes, and you will achieve.
I love it. And on the running front, is there anything that you'd encourage runners to do more of, less of, just in general, or to maximize things, just based on your own experience with it?
I think the biggest thing in that space is, like you touched on, be more holistic, be more open-minded. It is difficult, but move away from the mentality of I only need sport-specific training, I only need to run. If you can be generally fitter, healthier, and by that I mean if your nutrition is a little bit more dialed in and your muscles are a little bit stronger, combining that with improving your cardiovascular system from your running, you're going to be a better athlete. It's, I suppose, as you mentioned before, surrounding yourself with the people that are going to ensure your success.
I love it, man. There is something that always comes to mind when we start talking about those sort of things within the sport-specific space, and it comes back to I think it was like a 1970s, 1980s, the Russian sports scientists, they were trying to create this, the ultimate program that they could get. They got all their track athletes, all their sports like the weightlifting, powerlifting, all of those guys, and took all the programs from the top coaches they had at the time and got the sports scientists to analyze this. And they were expecting to come out with, okay, this is what we can just do from a young age to develop world-class athletes in every sport. Do you know what the conclusion they came out with was?
What was it?
It was the strongest athletes lift the heaviest weights in training, and the fastest athletes run the fastest times in training, which basically comes back to the best athletes are the best athletes, which you can take as two things. It's either genetically, if you're good, or the solution, and this is what I think I took from that and reading it is if we do things to make people better all round athletes and then apply them to their sport, whether that's running, strongman, rugby league, whatever that is, they're going to go better and better in that, or they're going to have a potential for a really higher peak. So that's a super cool thing to just see when you talk about the running side of stuff, is that it goes the same way. But man, this has been awesome. I really enjoy having you in. I know we could probably go for another hour. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Probably the best place is on Facebook or Instagram. I am Nik Adamson, APD, on those spots.
Awesome, man. We'll link that up. Thank you so much for coming in. Guys, if you enjoyed this, make sure you share it on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you're on. We're on there too, so let us know what you got out of it. Thank you. Done.
Thanks, mate.
Crushed it, man. Good job.
Yeah.